I first noticed something was wrong when my monthly water bill nearly doubled. It wasn't some gradual rise over time. It was sudden, sharp, and confusing. Living alone in a modest three-bedroom house in the suburbs, I had predictable habits, especially when it came to utilities. My showers were quick, my dishwasher rarely used, and I never watered the lawn like my neighbors did religiously. So when the number shot up, I assumed it had to be a mistake. I called the water company, and after being put on hold for half an hour, I finally spoke to someone who confirmed the meter readings were accurate. That only deepened the mystery. It couldn't be a leak. I had recently renovated the bathrooms and had the plumbing rechecked. But then I started noticing something stranger. The water pressure in my house would dip at odd hours. Not all the time, but usually around 4 in the afternoon. It was subtle, but enough for someone who worked from home like I did to pick up on. Being a freelance software engineer, I had the luxury, or perhaps the curse, of being home nearly 24/7. I began to suspect that someone was somehow using water inside my own home. A ridiculous thought, I know, but the numbers and timing told me something wasn't right. Then one afternoon, as I was taking out the trash, I had a casual chat with my next-door neighbor, Mr. Jenkins. He was a retired postman in his 70s and always had his eyes on the neighborhood. When I mentioned the weird water pressure, he chuckled and said, "Could be a squatter. You wouldn't believe what I've seen over the years. They're clever now. Use your place when you're gone, leave no trace." The idea sounded absurd, but it lodged itself into my mind like a splinter. That night, I didn't sleep well. I kept thinking about the back door, the garage entrance, the spare key I kept hidden behind the potted fern. I kept trying to rationalize it all, but there were too many little signs adding up. The scent of unfamiliar shampoo in the bathroom. A damp towel that I didn't remember using. A slight change in the position of my bathroom mat. The next day, I went to the local hardware store and bought a small security camera, one designed to be subtle, almost invisible. I installed it just outside the bathroom, angled toward the hallway. I wasn't trying to spy on anyone in the shower. I just wanted to know who was entering and when. It was a drastic move, one I never imagined I'd make in my own home. But my peace of mind was gone, and I needed answers. That evening, I set up the app and linked it to my phone. Then I waited. I didn't expect anything to happen. Part of me hoped the camera would capture nothing. That maybe I had just been overthinking everything, and the water company had screwed up the bill. The next morning, with a cup of black coffee in hand, I opened the app and checked the footage. There was nothing out of the ordinary until 4:12 p.m. That's when the camera captured movement. My breath caught in my throat. A woman. She appeared from the back door, moving quickly but confidently, like she had done this before. She was in her late 20s or early 30s, carrying a canvas tote bag. She went straight toward the bathroom and shut the door. I stared at the footage, heart pounding, completely frozen. Who was she? How did she get in? More importantly, why? I rewatched the clip multiple times. She used a key. A key. That detail unraveled me more than anything else. Someone had a copy of my key. Suddenly, the world inside my house felt less mine. I was no longer alone. I paced my living room, every shadow now suspicious. I didn't recognize the woman. She didn't look like a thief or someone on drugs. She looked composed, almost serene. But she was using my shower. And for some reason, she believed she belonged there. For the rest of that day, I was caught in a spiral of paranoia and curiosity. Should I call the police? Should I confront her? Should I wait and catch her in person? I decided to wait. I wanted to see if this was a one-time incident. Or a pattern. The following day, I checked the footage again. 4:14 p.m. There she was. Same tote bag, same confident stride. In and out within 15 minutes. I fast-forwarded through the video, trying to see what else she might have done. Nothing. Just used the bathroom. No signs of theft, no rummaging through my things. It was like she came here for one specific reason and nothing more. By the third day, I knew it was time to do more than observe. I wanted to know who she was and how she knew my house. So I went on a deep dive. I pulled out the old house documents, combed through prior owners. No names matched. I called the real estate agent who sold me the place 2 years ago, asking about any strange activity or people trying to access the home before I moved in. She was polite but unhelpful. No red flags. I even asked Mr. Jenkins if he'd ever seen a woman matching the description around my house. He rubbed his chin and said, maybe once or twice, but thought she was your cousin or something. Didn't think to ask. Now I knew for sure. This woman wasn't a ghost. She was real, and she had somehow folded herself into the edges of my daily routine without me noticing. The idea terrified me. And yet a part of me was fascinated. Why my house? Why me? And what could possibly be the reason for her strange, quiet invasion? I knew I needed answers. But more than that, I needed to decide who had control over my home, me or the mystery in the shower. The next afternoon, I came home early from the grocery store, heart racing with anticipation and nerves. I parked around the block so she wouldn't notice my car, and slipped in through the front door as quietly as I could. The house felt like it was holding its breath, the air tense and still, every creak of the wooden floor loud beneath my sneakers. I positioned myself in the hallway behind a half-open closet door and waited, staring at the blinking light of the hidden camera app on my phone. At 4:11 p.m., the alert went off. She was here. I heard the soft click of the back door unlocking, then footsteps across the kitchen tile. My chest tightened as I watched her pass by the hallway, just a shadow in motion. She looked exactly like in the footage, calm, practiced like she belonged here. She didn't even glance around, as if there were no reason to suspect anything was wrong. I listened as she shut the bathroom door and turned on the water. The distant rumble of the shower filled the silence. I stayed frozen for a full minute before stepping out from my hiding spot. I moved to the hallway just outside the bathroom, unsure what I would say, unsure what I wanted. Confront her. Scare her. Call the police while she was still inside. Instead, I did something strange. I sat down on the floor, my back against the wall, and waited. 15 minutes passed. Then the water shut off. My heart hammered against my ribs as I heard the shuffle of feet, the sound of a towel being hung. The door opened. She stepped out, and for the first time, she saw me. She gasped, stumbling back a step, dropping the tote bag to the floor. I stood up slowly, both of us stunned into silence. For a moment, neither of us said a word. Then I asked simply, "Who are you?" She blinked, lips parted, eyes wide. I didn't think anyone was home," she whispered. I repeated my question, gentler this time. "Why are you using my house?" She looked like she was deciding whether to run or speak, but eventually she lowered her gaze and said, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean any harm." That wasn't enough. I asked how she got in. She glanced down at her bag and then back up. "I have a key," she admitted. "To this house." She nodded. "I used to live here, a long time ago." The pieces refused to fit. "That's not possible," I said. "I bought this house 2 years ago." "Before that," she said quickly, her voice catching, "I lived here with my foster family. This house it was the only place I ever felt safe." Her eyes shimmered with memory, and for a second, I saw the version of her that must have lived here years ago. She continued, explaining that after aging out of the system, she had nowhere to go. She found a job but struggled with housing, bouncing from couch to couch. Then one day while searching online for familiar places, she saw this house listed for sale. She kept watching the listing, checking regularly, and when she saw it had been sold, she came by one day, just to look. That's when she discovered the spare key under the fern. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," she said. "I only came in once and then, I don't know. I just wanted to feel like I had something familiar, just for a moment." Her voice cracked. "I didn't steal anything. I never touched anything but the shower, I swear." I believed her. Somehow her presence made sense now. There was no malice in her actions, just loss, loneliness, and the quiet desperation of someone looking for shelter from life. I should have been angry, but I was. Instead, I found myself asking her name. Lana, she said. It felt oddly familiar. Then she asked if I remembered the old mural in the basement. I nodded, faded paint of stars and a moon, something I always assumed was there from a previous owner. I painted that, she said. It hit me then. The way she moved through the house, the way she knew every corner without hesitation. This place had imprinted on her, and she had left her imprint in return. We stood in the hallway, two strangers separated by years but connected by shared space. I didn't call the police. I didn't yell. Instead, I made her tea. We sat at my kitchen table, and she told me more. Stories of her time here, the couple who took her in, the window seat she used to read in, the Sunday nights when they made lasagna together. This house had been her last memory of home. When the foster family moved away, she was placed again, then again. Eventually, the system lost track of her. She aged out at 18 with nothing. And so, years later, she found her way back. I didn't know what to do with all of it. But I knew she wasn't a threat. When she asked if she should leave, I hesitated. You can stay for tea, I said. She smiled for the first time. After she left that day, I sat in the silence of the house and looked around. It no longer felt invaded. It felt layered, lived in, and now shared. The next few days were a blur of strange emotions, a mixture of curiosity, confusion, and something almost like guilt. I found myself looking at the house differently, noticing corners I'd ignored before, wondering what memories lingered in the baseboards, in the fading paint. Lana didn't come back the next day, and part of me worried she never would. But another part was relieved, unsure if I was ready for that conversation again. Still, her presence had shifted something in me. I spent a long time that evening sitting in the basement, staring at the faded mural of stars and moonlight she claimed as hers. The colors were chipped, the edges cracked, but now that I knew its origin, it felt alive. I imagined a younger version of her sitting on the floor, brush in hand, trying to paint a sky that made her feel safe. That image stuck with me. By the third day, I was back in my routine, typing code from my desk, sipping black coffee, the normal rhythm of life returning. But then at 4:10 p.m., I heard a soft knock on the back door. Not the key turning, not the stealthy entry, just a knock. When I opened it, she was standing there, tote bag in hand, expression uncertain. I wasn't sure if I should come, she said quietly. You knocked this time, I replied. She nodded, half smiling, half scared. I wanted to ask if it's okay, just one more time. I could have said no, but I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, like she was entering a museum of her own past. I told her I'd wait in the kitchen. She disappeared down the hallway and closed the bathroom door behind her. The familiar sound of water rushing through the pipes filled the house. I didn't watch the camera footage this time. Instead, I stared at the counter, at the tea mug still sitting there from 3 days ago. When she came out, towel wrapped around her shoulders, hair damp, she looked different. Not just physically, but something deeper. Lighter. We sat again, this time without the fear. She asked if I ever wondered what happened to things after they were left behind. I told her I used to think nothing lingered, that people moved on and took their stories with them. They don't, she said. Places remember, people forget, but the walls, they hold everything. It was poetic, sad, and true. She told me more about her time here. About her foster parents, Michael and Jenna, who tried hard but couldn't keep her. They were transferred for work and didn't qualify for out-of-state guardianship. She was sent away, shuffled through homes, eventually out into the world with a trash bag of clothes and no roadmap. I just wanted to feel clean again, she said. That shower was always my reset. It made me feel like I could start over. Her words sat heavy in the air. We didn't say much more. When she left, she handed me the key. You should have this. It's not mine anymore. But I didn't take it. Keep it. If you ever need to come back, just knock. Her eyes welled with tears, but she didn't cry. She left quietly, and I stood at the door long after she was gone. The next morning, I found myself painting over the mural, not to erase it, but to restore it. I went to the hardware store and bought the same deep blues and muted purples I imagined she once used. I carefully followed the lines, recreating the stars. By evening, it looked nearly the same. I took a photo and texted her. She didn't respond right away. But a few hours later, I got one word back: beautiful. In the days that followed, Lana returned twice more. Each time she knocked. Each time we shared tea afterward. We didn't talk about the past anymore. Instead, we talked about books, about music, about the lives we had lived since we last crossed paths with this house. It was a strange friendship, fragile but real. One rooted not in shared memories, but in the space where those memories were made. She started bringing things. A small candle, she said, used to sit in the window. A chipped mug with a cartoon sun on it. They belong here more than I do, she said. But I wasn't so sure. The house didn't feel complete without her anymore. It felt like we were both caretakers of something larger than ourselves. Not owners, not guests. Just people trying to remember who they once were. And who they might still become. On the sixth visit, she brought a photograph. It was old, creased at the corners, but clear. A young girl in a sundress, standing next to a crooked birdbath I'd never paid attention to. That was the day I painted the mural, she said. She handed it to me, then hesitated. You can keep it, or not, just thought maybe the house should have it back. I framed it that night. Hung it in the hallway just outside the bathroom. So that anyone who walked down that hall would see her. So that the house wouldn't forget again. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I noticed the way the light hit the mural in the basement just right, casting soft shadows on the curves of stars I'd helped repaint. I sat on the stairs, watching how the late sun filtered through the tiny basement window, coloring everything in a golden hue. It felt like the house was breathing, like it had finally exhaled after years of holding something in. Lana hadn't been back in nearly a week, and while I didn't expect her to return daily, her absence left a faint hollow in the space she had reawakened. I found myself walking the hallways more than usual, opening doors just to check they were still there, that the silence hadn't swallowed them whole. The photo she gave me remained on the wall, its corners catching the light in ways that made the little girl seem almost alive. She was watching something off camera, smiling, unaware of the decades ahead. Sometimes I imagined Lana standing beside her, older now, maybe wiser, maybe just more tired. And yet, when the knock came that Thursday, I almost didn't hear it. It was softer than usual, tentative. When I opened the door, Lana looked different. Not tired, but distant, like someone who had just come back from a long walk through old dreams. She wasn't holding her tote bag. Instead, she carried a cardboard box worn at the edges, sealed with strips of yellowing tape. She stepped inside without a word, her movements heavy but sure. I followed her to the kitchen, where she placed the box gently on the table. I'm leaving town, she said, voice quiet. The words hit me like a cold gust of wind. I didn't know what to say, so I waited. I found a job in Oregon. It's with a nonprofit. They help girls aging out of foster care. I nodded, not trusting my voice. She looked at me, eyes full of gratitude and something deeper, grief maybe, or hope. I thought, before I go, the house should have these. She pushed the box toward me. Inside were fragments of a life. Letters, old photos, a faded diary, a dried daisy pressed in wax paper. I touched them reverently, afraid to disturb the dust of memories. These all came from here. She nodded. They were tucked behind the basement panel. I hid them when I thought I might get moved again. Then I forgot. I could picture her small hands slipping them behind the wall, a child's quiet rebellion against impermanence. I asked her if she wanted to take them with her. No, she said. This house is their home, not mine. She stood and walked slowly toward the hallway. I followed, both of us silent. At the mural, she stopped and traced one of the stars with her finger. "I used to make wishes on these," she whispered. "Some came true, some didn't." I didn't ask which ones. Instead, I stepped beside her, shoulder to shoulder. "You gave this place meaning again," I said. She smiled softly. "No, it gave it back to me. You just opened the door." We stood there a long time. Eventually, she turned, gave me one last look, and walked out the front door. She didn't say goodbye. Maybe because it wasn't one. The weeks after she left felt like the quiet after a storm. Still but not empty. I organized the contents of the box, careful with every item. I put her daisy in a new frame, placed her diary in the drawer beside my bed. Some nights I read a page. They were mostly small observations, what she ate, what she feared, who she missed. But they breathed with a rawness that stripped me bare. I installed new locks on the doors. Not to keep her out, but to protect what she left. I started volunteering at the community center twice a week, tutoring teens in coding and basic computer skills. Some of them reminded me of her, too old to be kids, too young to be forgotten. In quiet moments, I found myself walking through the house, fingers grazing door frames, feeling her presence tucked into the grain of the wood. One evening, months later, a postcard arrived. It was from Oregon. A photograph of misty pine trees and a single line. "The shower here isn't as good, but the girls are, thank you." No name. No return address. I smiled and pinned it beside the mural, so that she would always be part of the walls, so that she would never be forgotten again. Winter came with its quiet silences and long blue shadows stretching across my living room. The house felt heavier somehow, not sad, but filled with a stillness that wasn't there before. Each morning I passed the mural, now touched by the low winter sun, and paused for a second too long. There was comfort in its presence, and in the way it reminded me of a story most people would never know. I didn't hear from Lana again. No calls, no postcards beyond the one. But I imagined her standing on a misty Oregon porch, coffee in hand, watching over a group of girls who needed someone to care. I thought about how many of them probably felt like shadows to the world. And how maybe, just maybe, she was helping them find the light. Life moved on around me. Clients emailed, deadlines came and went, and the code kept compiling. But something had shifted in the rhythm of my days. I started noticing the world more. The smell of coffee in the early morning, the sound of crows above the chimney, the way the snow melted in crooked lines down the roof. The house had become more than a structure. It had become memory. One night around mid-January, I heard a knock at the front door. It startled me, not because it was loud, but because it had been so long since anyone came unannounced. When I opened it, a young woman stood there, bundled in a green coat, her face half covered by a knitted scarf. "Hi," she said, unsure, her voice trembling slightly. "Are you the one who tutors at the community center?" I nodded, stepping aside. She entered cautiously, scanning the space like she was afraid to touch anything. She looked around 18 or 19, with anxious eyes and bitten fingernails. "I'm Jenna," she said. "Lana told me I could trust you." The name hit like a gust of wind down an open chimney. I invited her to sit, made tea without asking, and waited. She explained that she had aged out of the system 3 months ago and had been couch hopping since. She said Lana had mentored her briefly before moving west and had spoken of a house, a safe house, not in name but in spirit. I felt my throat tighten. She pulled a folded note from her coat pocket. It was a short message, handwritten in a looping script I recognized instantly. "If you ever need a warm place and someone who listens, ask for him. He won't close the door." Signed with just a drawn star. I didn't hesitate. I set her up in the guest room, gave her clean sheets, a towel, and a key. That night, after she had fallen asleep, I sat in the basement again. I looked at the mural, then at the photo on the wall. The little girl smiled as always, and I whispered aloud, "Thank you." Over the next few weeks, Jenna stayed. She didn't ask for much. She applied for jobs, studied online, and joined me at the community center on Saturdays. I never tried to replace Lana or to force some kind of script on what this meant. But in quiet ways, I saw how the space that had once been healing for one girl was now quietly healing another. And perhaps healing me too. Sometimes, I'd catch Jenna tracing the edges of the mural absent-mindedly. One morning she asked, "Did you help paint this?" I told her the truth, only the second half. She smiled, like she understood that things didn't have to begin with us to belong to us. Spring came slowly. The snow melted into patches. The trees began to yawn into green again, and the birds returned in their messy chorus. The house breathed with new life. Jenna got a part-time job at a bookstore, then another tutoring gig. She started saving up for a place of her own. But there was no urgency. Some nights we still sat in the kitchen, talking over tea, like old friends in mismatched time. She'd bring home books and leave them stacked by the mural. "This one's about constellations," she said one day, handing me a worn astronomy guide. She was building something of her own, layering her presence into the house, gently, respectfully. And I let it happen, because that's what the house had taught me. Not to hold on too tightly, not to fear change, but to make room for stories, to let them unfold, echo, and stay. One night, after weeks of warmth and light, I found a new postcard tucked beside the front door. No postage, no envelope, just a card. It was hand-painted, the same basement mural, stars aglow with the words, "For every girl who thought the door would stay closed." On the back, 3 words, "Still knocking, Lana." I closed my eyes and held the card to my chest. The house was not just a home anymore. It was a legacy of unlocked doors. Summer arrived with sunlight pouring through every window, illuminating the dust that danced in the warm morning air. The house was alive again, not just in feeling but in motion. Jenna had blossomed in ways neither of us had expected. Her part-time job turned into full-time, and the little savings jar by her bed grew heavier week by week. She still came home every evening, key in hand, greeting the house with a quiet reverence, as though it had become a companion in her journey. We often ate dinner together without planning to. Sometimes it was just cereal. Other times, she cooked pasta or baked banana bread from a recipe her friend gave her. One evening, over a quiet meal, she told me she found a small apartment. Just a studio, 2 blocks from the bookstore. "It's not much," she said, "but it's mine." I nodded slowly, surprised at how proud and sad I felt in the same breath. She was ready. The night before she moved, we stood together in the basement again. The mural had faded slightly with time but held firm, like it understood its place in our lives. "I used to be scared of silence," she said. "Now I think silence is where healing finishes." She placed her hand on the wall beside the largest star. I did the same, and for a moment there was nothing but the hum of the world beneath us. The next morning she packed lightly. A suitcase, a book bag, a worn sketchpad, and the postcard Lana had left. I helped her carry things to the curb, and when the rideshare pulled up, we stood awkwardly beside each other. "You changed my life," she said. "No," I replied, "you just needed a place to land for a while." She hugged me hard. Not like a daughter, not like a friend, but like someone who had found safety and was brave enough to let it go. After she left, the house felt different. Not empty, not sad, just waiting. A few days later, I decided to repaint the guest room. I moved the furniture, opened the windows, and rolled soft yellow paint over the pale gray walls. It wasn't just for aesthetics. It was a way to say, this space is ready again. I added a bookshelf near the bed, filled it with donated novels, self-help books, and a few blank journals. In the closet, I left extra bedding and a folded note. "You're safe here, you matter." I didn't know who would read it next, but I knew someone would. The mural stayed untouched. By now, its edges were fraying, the colors losing their sharpness. But it didn't need restoring anymore. Its strength was in what it held, not how it looked. One afternoon, I got a letter from Oregon. A different hand than Lana's, messier, almost childlike. Inside, a drawing. Crayon on construction paper. A house with stars over the roof and two stick figures, one tall, one small, holding hands. At the bottom it said, "Miss Lana says thank you." I framed it and hung it next to the mural. Another voice added to the story. Another echo in the hall. I didn't plan to create a sanctuary. I never set out to offer shelter or hope or healing. All I did was ask a question, open a door and listen. And somehow that had been enough. Now when I walk through my home, I feel every voice, every footstep that ever crossed its threshold. The squeak of floorboards no longer sounds like wear and tear. It sounds like a welcome. The clink of teacups in the kitchen is not routine, it's remembrance. The sound of running water in the bathroom no longer startles me. It calms me. It reminds me of Lana, of Jenna, of all the girls who might one day knock. The house remains open, not always in locks or doors, but in intention. And though I live here alone, I am never truly alone. Because this place, built from wood and paint and years, has become something larger. A collection of stories, a map of healing, a constellation of second chances. Still glowing, still growing, still knocking,